Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Wednesday Palaver. Now, today we are going to be discussing something which is making the headlines not just in Ghana but throughout West Africa. Last week, our President, His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, went to the White House as one of 49 African heads of states who responded to the call by the United States of America to have some kind of discussion which would lead to the marginalization of China and Russia in Africa. That's quite interesting already, isn't it? But our president, in a meeting with Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States of America, actually reported his counterpart in Burkina Faso and indicated that Burkina Faso had brought in Russian mercenaries from the Wagner group, and that Burkina Faso had made available to them a whole mine as payment for their services. And to quote our president, he said that the presence of Russian mercenaries on the northern border is distressing. He actually went on to ask for a strategic partnership with the U.S. Apparently to counter this distressing phenomena on the northern border. He then went on to assure the Americans, especially Secretary Blinken, that as for Ghana, we are firmly behind the United States and that we have been supporting the Ukrainians in their war with Russia. Well, fortunately for us, there's a gentleman who was one of the very first to comment on the issue. And he raised the question of non-alignment in international affairs and raised all the relevant questions about, indeed, how and why not the Wagner group does not pose a threat to Ghana's security and so on. And today, we decided to bring him on this show to lead us in this conversation on the implications of what our president said and did in Washington. He's welcome to Wednesday Palaver. The show is going to be very simple. He's going to lead us in that discussion. He's going to do a presentation. Thereafter, we're going to come to the studio audience for questions and comments, and then we go to our social media platforms for questions and comments, and then he can round up. My pleasure to welcome to the studio security analyst and expert, Mr. Saani. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Thank you, studio audience, for having me. It's always a pleasure. I always say Pan-African TV is my second home, and I feel like I'm home anytime I come around here. Beautiful, very friendly faces. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So, when this issue came up, I didn't want to believe it. At the point, I felt it was fake news. But I took the trouble to go on social media, and I was absolutely gobsmacked. Because if it came from any other person, I would have understood, because the person might not necessarily have certain skills so far as diplomacy is concerned. But this is coming from the Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces, someone who has been a foreign affairs minister before and should know the implications of whatever statements he makes, especially if it has to do with matters hinging on security. But I must say, without mincing words, that the statements made by our president is a monumental diplomatic gaffe. And we have to accept that. By accepting that, we should be able to put in place certain mechanisms to reset our relationships, not just with Burkina Faso, but with other countries within the West African sub-region who now view us with deep suspicions, and particularly also with Russia. But before I go into the nitty-gritty, it's important to get to understand the relationship between Ghana and Russia, which dates back all the way from our independence. In fact, There was a Soviet delegation that was sent down to Ghana in 1957. That was headed by the Minister of State, I.A. Benedictov, who visited who visited Ghana during our Independence Day celebration. And that was the beginning of a very long-lasting friendship to come between the two countries. We established diplomatic relations on January 14th, 1958. Soon after, in 1959, the Soviet embassy in Accra was established. So the Russian embassy in Accra has been around since 1958, and Ghana's embassy in Moscow was also established in 1960. So you would understand that truly our relationship dates back all the way to the independence period. We have actively cooperated at the UN. In February 2004, for example, the New York Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Alexander Saltanov, had a conversation with the Foreign Minister of Ghana. So we've also had officials meeting Russian officials, not today, even when President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo was foreign minister in 2004. He met a Russian delegation to recommit to the friendship that the two countries have enjoyed over the period. Even though Russia might not be one of our top trading partners, currently I think the top trading partner with Ghana is China, which as at last year stood at about $1.8 billion, followed by the US, the UK, and India. But that notwithstanding, we still rely on Russia for major cereal imports. For example, in 2019, 47.33 million worth of cereals came into the country from Russia. Fertilizer, over $36 million. Milling products, etc. also quite a considerable rate. And I'm pretty sure we might have heard about Atomic Energy Commission, right? Atomic energy. The Russians were actually behind that. They helped us to successfully develop a nuclear reactor in Ghana for peaceful purposes. All these years, we've had a very cordial relationship with them. Now, let's go into perspective, non-aligned. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of you might have heard about non-aligned. In 1961, drawing on the principles agreed at the Bandung Conference of 1955, the non-aligned movement was officially put together in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, right? Through an initiative of Yugoslav President Joseph Broz. And the founding members include the Indian Prime Minister then, Jawaharlal Nehru, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser, Ghanaian President Aden, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was a founding member of the non-aligned movement, and also the Indonesian president then. And it was built on 5 major principles. If applied today to the latter, we wouldn't have any conflict situation in any part of the world. And the first one is about mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, right? The second is mutual non-aggression. The third is mutual non-interference in domestic affairs. The fourth, equality and mutual benefit. And the last one, peaceful coexistence. So just put these 5 principles into perspective. Apply it everyday international politics, security matters. You think that if it was applied to the latter, we would have any conflict situation in any part of the world. And Ghana, I must say, has earned a lot of international respect and favor because we've stuck to the values of the non-aligned movement. Unfortunately, remarks by the president, like I described, is making nonsense of Ghana's, non-aligned movement, the gains we've made all these years. Burkina Faso is a very important partner so far as improving security, not just our security in Ghana, but the wider West African sub-region is concerned. Burkina has been grappling with militants for some time now. The French came in through a number of operations, Takuba, Bakan, etc., which I must say has rather actually made things worse. Because when the French came, Burkina, the militants didn't control 20% of Burkina. But today, unfortunately, the militants, the so-called jihadists, control about 60% of Burkina Faso. That is worrying, and that should be a cause for concern to us here in Ghana. Because once they are able to take over Burkina, we might be next, because they will be motivated, they will be emboldened, and they would want to expand their scope. Groups like Kasiba Masina, they want to revert to the old Fulani Empire. It's part of, the affidavits of Jenin, Jamal Nusra Islamiyya wal Muslimin. Okay? And parts of northern Ghana, is part of that Masiba Empire. As a result, consequently, they would want to make, certain strides in Ghana. So at the point the Burkinabes realized that their friendship with the French is not, yielding any profits. The French, they are extremely transactional. Anywhere you see French on African soil, they definitely have something to benefit from. For example, they are very active in the Sahel for obvious reasons. Uranium, that is what they need. In the 60s, they used the Sahel to test their atomic bombs, the hydrogen bombs, etc. So they have an interest. As a result, when you see French coming in with their soldiers, don't think they love you or they are coming to help you. It's because of that interest. In fact, there are even reports that the French have on several occasions negotiated with the terrorists in the Sahel for certain safety guarantees and, passages. So you see that when the French convoy is moving, no attack. But when the Malian military moves, they are attacked. Okay, and the people were not happy about that. So the Malians decided that, hey, let's go for the Russians, the Wagner group. We should rethink our strategic alliances. So it is better when you come to me to tell me, look, I am here because of your money. Then we reach a deal, rather than coming to me and telling me, oh, I'm here because you are a fine boy. Meanwhile, you are here for the money. So it is important to deal with people who are honest with you. So whatever arrangement it is with Wagner, that is fair. Okay, but if you come to me in the name of helping me counter a certain threat, then in the end, you are exploiting my mineral resources. That should be a bit of a problem. Okay, and within international security, international politics, they say that anything you do that is in the interest of national security, there's no immorality to it. The US has used drones to go after militants, in some cases collateral damage resulting in the killings of innocent people, including children. But they say it is to preserve US national security. We all know what happened the last days of their withdrawal from Afghanistan. An innocent man carrying water with children around, they bombed only for them to realize that he was an innocent man, and the children also got killed. All right? The US targeted Aulaki, who is an American citizen, and within US law, you are not supposed to kill a fellow American. But they targeted him in Yemen because they thought he was a threat to US national security. So whatever a country does, even if it means the use of nukes to preserve its survival, so far as it doesn't become a detriment to another country's security. You get me? So Burkina Faso is a sovereign country, and it's within the right of Burkina Faso to go into an agreement with whoever, just as Ghana went into an agreement with the US on a defense cooperation, and nobody said about it. The same thing, Burkina Faso is also likely to go into any defense pact with anybody. Unfortunately, the president decided that he reports it to the Americans when we have ECOWAS, and he has been a staunch supporter of African problems requiring African solutions. Yet, you don't complain to the Burkinabes, you don't complain to ECOWAS, you don't complain to AU, you go straight to Washington and report to the foreign affairs minister of US like a schoolboy reporting to a headmaster. It is shameful, it is disgraceful, it is demeaning. And see the shame, the international shame it has brought to Ghana. And a lot of West Africans would now be looking at us with one eye closed. And we've exchanged intelligence with a lot of countries within West Africa, including Burkina Faso. You think they would give us intelligence at will, knowing full well we are an American darling boy? Of course not. Okay? And Burkina Faso has also cooperated with us in implementing various aspects of the Accra Initiative. We met about a month ago at the Accra International Conference Center to discuss the elements, and I was quite vociferous, and I made even comments about the need for us to have a standby force of some kind, and that was included in the final resolution, which the ministers came to discuss, passed it on to the heads of states who adopted it. And Burkina Faso played a very important role in that regard. We even had the Prime Minister coming to Ghana. But because of what has happened, it has completely broken the trust between Ghana and Burkina Faso. And they will be very careful about us, especially their dealings with us. We are bound to witness or to see reduced cooperation in implementing various aspects of the Accra Initiative, unfortunately. And if the Burkinabes also decide, oh, okay, this is what you pay us with, okay, let's let the border loose, that would be a cataclysmic security nightmare for those of us in Ghana. Indeed, it is safe to say that Wagner operating in Burkina Faso is even to our interest. We are not fighting the terrorists. They are fighting them on our behalf. Because if they succeed in Burkina, they would equally target Ghana. All right. So the Burkinabes are keeping them at bay. And that, I must say, is in our interest. Unfortunately, these comments would only negate the gains that have been made so far as cementing our relationship with Burkina Faso is concerned, our collaboration with other countries within the West African sub-region to improve security, all due to the, reckless statements by the president. How many more minutes do I have?
Very little.
Very little. So basically, this is it to the preamble, and I'm hoping that as time goes on, more angles to this issue would come up. Then we go into them.
Well, this is a security expert, analyst, and he's told us his views about the president's comments about Burkina Faso, the Wagner group, and his appeal, to the United States of America to form a strategic partnership with Ghana. There are a number of issues which come up immediately. One simply is the fact that Ghana has actually authorized the establishment of a U.S. military base in Accra. The other is that the French has had a military presence in West Africa over many years. And the other is also that there are subcontracted groups all over the world. We've got Blackwater,
Yeah, absolutely.
which operated in Iraq, Blackwater, which operated in Afghanistan, and so on. And therefore, why does the president of Ghana single out the Wagner group and describe them as mercenary and so on? All of these issues will come up. But it is my pleasure now to allow all of you in the studio to raise your questions and to make your comments. And I'd like to see by hand those who are ready with their questions and comments. How many of you want to make comments? How many of you want to ask questions? Show by hand. I see 1, I see 2, I see 3, and I see 4. So we'll start with the first 4. We'll start with Azuma Besori, and then...
No, I think it's a back.
We'll start with Azuma Besori, and then we'll move on to Teresa, and then the gentleman here, and then Showboy. So, Azuma.
Mine is a comment about when the news first broke out there were comments on the ground in some quarters that the president went to the U.S. to attend the conference and to ask for aids. I mean, with what is happening, the economic hardship that we're facing, had to sell our country to the United States for us to get money, come pushing us. That was his main thing, because there was no other way, because the economy was just falling out, and he didn't know what to do again. And going to America, he can't leave them and come back empty-handed. So he had to say something to please the Americans, so that they can get money to come supplement what is happening. So that's what I was hearing. Thank you.
I think listening to the preamble, I would like to know what you think of the approach, because it clearly states out that the approach of just jumping straight to the US isn't the best option. So what would you have or think, what do you think or suggest for the president's work?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And mine will be a bit, maybe I might be, but it's part of security, where so maybe security thing that is very important to the country. So mine is when you drive or when you are in the public transport, you could see, or you will see these young, energetic boys wiping the windscreen of vehicles, and this is very, 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 very important to us, because it's very easy for them to probably get people to approach them, and it will lead to a lot of social vices, and it will be a deterrent to our country and a security threat to us. So what do you think the government should do, or even the individual to do, to prevent these things? Thank you.
And I'm also looking at it on two angles. First, I think my friend mentioned the first one. I think this current leadership can do anything at all for money. So one of the reasons that I think is for the Americans to come and support with the military and all those things, by then they'll be able to get something. But secondly, I'm still of the view that our leadership, and Akufo-Addo is not still happy with the kind of power he has. I think he still wants some more power. Assuming this Wagner group are moved out, then the insurgency comes in, it means they will have to authorize for something like authoritarian or a dictatorship, so that it can stay 2024 and after. So I believe one of the reasons is to look for money and to ask for more power, because that money is still, I believe, is still power drunk, and would like to stay in power for more.
Well, those are the issues being raised. If you would like to respond to them.
Okay, so you started with a very important point, so-called mercenaries operating in different parts of the world. And you mentioned the most notorious mercenary group ever, Blackwater. Look, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International has cited, both of them, they have cited Blackwater for gross human rights violations, particularly in Iraq. Killing of children in Baghdad at a runabout. When they heard a gunshot, they decided that they kill any human being they see there, including children. How many people have been held to account as a result? The Turkish, they have their own mercenary groups who are fighting alongside the Free Syrian Army in Syria to overthrow President Bashar al-Assad. They have mercenary groups who are also fighting in support of the UN-backed administration in Tripoli, Libya. The Egyptians, they have their mercenaries also fighting alongside Colonel Haftar in Libya. The Saudi Arabians, the Emiratis, they have mercenaries who are fighting against the Houthis in Yemen. The Americans, they've dealt with mercenaries. They've dealt with, I don't know how many of you have read the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba, the Contras of Nicaragua, etc. So this is no news. Then, when Blackwater was wreaking havoc in Iraq, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was the foreign affairs minister. He knows all too well So it is absolutely hypocritical to pretend that Wagner is the only mercenary group in the world which poses a danger to Ghana, and to make it look like Wagner invades countries. Wagner has no business with you if you don't invite them or agree in principle on the modalities concerned. Central African Republic, Sudan, Egypt, and other places. So we need to take note of some of these things. Well, when you mentioned about the president speaking perhaps to please the Americans, I think largely he spoke because he was caught up in the frenzy of the moment. I think he was enjoying the conversation and he perhaps overspoke. Even when you pay attention, critical attention to the video, you'd realize that he wasn't reading, it wasn't scripted. And his flow was not as it's always been. You know, there were bleeps. Then you would know this is an afterthought, and he might not have necessarily engaged his experts before going on to make, you know, those remarks. Unfortunately, the remarks have major implications. I was on a number of international media. We had people from Burkina Faso also interviewed, and if I tell you the level of anger, I've spoken with people there in Burkina, our diplomatic mission and all that, and they are praying that, hey, we are just praying there are no street protests over what the president said, because that would bring unnecessary antagonism, belligerence towards Ghanaians just because of one man's reckless statements. I think it's an unfortunate situation, and I'm hoping that quickly something would be done to, you know, ease the tensions. You also asked a very important question about what should have been done. If Ghana has any consent, look, there are diplomatic channels. It's just a phone call away. This is no rocket science. Okay, Ghana is very respected, not just in West Africa, in Africa. We are the big boys, even though we are fairly a small country with not too many people. But we are very respected. When we talk, they listen. This is just about picking up a phone call. You don't even have to call Abuja or anything. Just call straight Ouagadougou. Tell them, these are my challenges. What do you think we can do? Work together to solve it, because I have security concerns. And I'm even wondering whether his statements was based on any intel. I don't think, because any intel that comes to tell you Wagner would invade Ghana is a useless intel. Excuse my language. I mean, you know, Wagner is not interested in Ghana. We have no business with Wagner. So the president could have handled this better. If they didn't listen, we go to ECOWAS. If ECOWAS doesn't do anything, we go to AU. There are too many processes. In fact, we have a million ways to deal with the situation, and certainly the US is not part of it. I hope you get me. Then we call them the squeegee boys. Those who clean they are part of a vulnerable population, not just them. We have the street beggars. We have those children who grow up with their parents in the streets, those who grow up without their parents, those who are victims of kidnapping, some are victims of trafficking, etc. They are all over the major city centers, and you know, because of the environment in which they grow, they have to adapt. You know, so they also invariably have to go into crime and all that, and they are a potential target for terrorist groups as well. You know, when terrorists come, they look at the most vulnerable, the most marginalized. That's why I was very concerned about the way we treat the Fulanis. We need to be very careful. We need to be very careful so as not to make them feel marginalized and not to make them feel part of us. Okay, so such people are a vulnerable group we need to pay attention to. And it makes me wonder, the Department of Social Services, something like that, social welfare and all that, you wonder how they exist, maybe on paper, but practically they don't exist. It's unfortunate. Then the last one, I read an article about the possibility of us doing that. I mean, the president talking about that because of aid. Obviously, some promises have been made. Okay, the US has also promised to invest about $50 billion in Africa. China is investing over $200 billion. So if it is about money, I think the president should have said this in Beijing. Right? You know, because, I mean, how much can you possibly be given? But there are various angles to what the president has said and the implications, and it makes just no sense. I mean, I've been thinking about it. What is it with the benefits? Is it money? What is it? Is it favor? Americans have no friends. They have interest. And the sooner the president understood that, the better.
Well, viewers, this is an announcement from the management of Pan-African Television. On Friday, Pan-African Television will be organizing a health screening program with the Cuban Medical Brigade on the premises of Pan-African Television here in Abelempe. So our neighbors in Abelempe, wherever you are, if you want to undergo health screening with the Cuban Medical Brigade, the premises of Pan-African Television is where you ought to be on Friday from midday till about 5 o'clock in the evening. So there's an invitation from the management of Pan-African Television, health screening at Pan-African Television on Friday. Everybody is invited and is being handled by the Cuban Medical Brigade. Now, we'd like to invite our comrade and friend, Abdul Haq, to give us messages on our social media platform.
Okay, so I will start with our WhatsApp. We have some messages coming in from Alif Mubarak from Kumasi. Says, Akufo-Addo's government is by far Akufo-Addo's government is by far the worst Ghana has seen. And then we have Sena from Volta region saying that, how does this affect the day-to-day life of we the ordinary people? Aziz from Tamale also says that this is an attempt to simply destroy the good name Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah has earned for Ghana in the geopolitical arena. We also have another message coming in from no name. It says the greatest human rights abuser are the ones our president decided to ask for support from President Akufo-Addo. Please, anytime you see a camera, please stay away. We can afford to fight a war. We can't afford to fight a war either, military or financially. Please, Clifford from Navrongo. From Clement in Polkatanga, what at all prompted the president to make this comment? Okay. We have a very weak opposition. If my research tells me that 15 strong opposition members can change the situation, Mohammed from Tamale, okay, say, please forgive Nanado. He is very confused now. Check his posture when he was talking, just like class 1 boy. Mohammed from Tamale. Oh, Mohammed. Okay. So we have someone saying hi, another hello. Okay. Mona Lisa is asking that she's saying that she's enjoying the show. If she can get the contact of Mr. Adib Saani. We're asking for you after. Okay. So we have another one here saying, my name is Kofi Gentle, Pan-Africa, you do all. Okay. My name is Favor and I'm sending this message from Nkwanta. Please, what is the president doing? We don't understand. Okay, so I'll take some messages from our Facebook. Okay. We have Kwesi saying, thank you, Mr. Adib Saani, for your insightful submission and also exhibiting the courage to point out to our president how reckless his statement was and its implication on our dear country. My question is there a way to resolve this developing mistrust between Ghana and our neighbors, Burkina, as a result of this reckless statement of the president? Okay. So Justice from Kasua is also saying that we thank God our economy is bouncing back. Are you sure? Okay. So we have Aminu Zurkan9 also saying that monitoring live from the northern region. Thank you. From Suleimana Abdurrahim from Tamale, it is about time the government started listening to the world-class security experts, such as Adib Saani, on security matters to avoid our country from total security collapse. And we have this coming from Abdul. He says, how does this affect the ordinary people of Ghana? How do we take this government out of power? And we have Ibrahim also saying, what gives Akufo-Addo the audacity to interfere in the Burkina Faso government deals? This is none of his business, and in any case, did they interfere when Ghana signed a deal with the U.S. Army to secure a military base in Accra? Why are you worried about the situation in Burkina Faso when your government here in Ghana is unpopular, where all our natural resources are already out of our control? And then we have another, Ibrahim saying, well said, Mr. Adib Saani. I think that's some of the messages we are receiving from our social media.
Well, these are messages from our social media platforms, and if you would like to comment, we'd like to give you 4 minutes.
Okay. I think someone asked a very important question about how we can mend our relationship with Burkina Faso. It is easy to break, but difficult to mend, right? But I think there's still a window of opportunity. I would have expected immediately the president said that a strong team or a high-powered government delegation would be dispatched immediately to Ouagadougou to engage the authorities and to get them to understand that it was a mistake to have made those statements. Perhaps the president wanted to, like they are saying, like when the ambassador was summoned there, he told the Burkinabe authorities that the president only wanted to draw the attention of the international community to what is happening there. But certainly, you don't draw attention by snitching. That was wrong. You don't do that. It breaks down the trust and confidence. But that notwithstanding, we can still reach out to the Burkinabes and see how we can find common grounds, agree on certain principles going forward, and let sleeping dogs lie. But it wouldn't be easy. Apart from that delegation, I'm hearing something, but I wouldn't want to be the first to let it out because this is from a protected source. But beyond that, the president should reach out to the Burkinabes and most importantly, apologize to them. They deserve an apology because this doesn't only have implications on our relations with Burkina Faso, but with Mali as well, that has contracted Wagner, and other countries within West Africa who would now view us with deep suspicions, and also Russia, which is an important trading and diplomatic partner, at the international stage.
Well, in discussing the relations with Russia, one element was missing. Soon after independence, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was very instrumental in training most of the technical manpower that we needed. So you find that many Ghanaian doctors were trained by the erstwhile Soviet Union, engineers, and so on. So our manpower needs were satisfied through the engagement with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and so on. I'm just wondering why a president would go and sit in front of a foreign minister and be complaining about another government. I mean, it's never done. I mean, diplomacy, whole president of Ghana sitting in front of a foreign minister and snitching. You know, it's unbelievable. The other thing that I don't quite understand is why this snitching was actually captured on camera and released to the world. I mean, unbelievable. It was so sloppy, you know. Here we are. The Burkinabes have recalled the ambassador. The Ghana ambassador in Ouagadougou has been summoned, and I understand that our ambassador in Moscow is not at post. Perhaps if he were at post, he also probably would have been summoned. But whatever it is, as you say, this reckless statement has actually poisoned our relations. Not just with the government of Burkina Faso, but with the government of Guinea, with the government of Mali and so on. But also changed the public perception of our president. You remember when our president went to see Macron and made the statement that Africa could develop without foreign aid and so on? He virtually became the hero of French-speaking West Africa. Now, French-speaking West Africa wants the French out, and they actually support the engagement to the Russians and so on. And the president goes doing this, and he's lost all that in just a twinkle of an eye. Now, our time is far gone, and on behalf of Pan-African Television, on behalf of our studio audience and so on, we'd like to say a very, very big thank you to our brother, our friend, security analyst and security expert, Adib Saani. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for sharing your views with us. We always say that please keep your dial on Pan-African Television. We say that for good reason. Because the best in current affairs, the best in news, best in entertainment, best in everything is on Pan-African Television. So please keep your dial on Pan-African Television until we meet again next week. It's bye-bye from all of us. Bye-bye.